Study Section 9. Naturalness and redundancy in phonology. Introduction. In previous study sections, we have discussed phonological theories. We have focused on some concepts of generative phonology, such as distinctive features, phonological rules, and how to formalize them. While discussing the foregoing, we mentioned the importance of naturalness and redundancy in phonology. In this study section, we shall discuss the two concepts fully. Learning outcomes for study section 9. When you have studied this section, you should be able to define and use correctly all of the keywords printed in bold. Discuss the concept of naturalness and give examples from English. Discuss the concept of redundancy and give examples from English. Relate the two concepts. Naturalness. A natural class is a group of language sounds that share some phonetic features. The articulatory and acoustic properties of the sounds of a language determine their natural classes. These properties are named using features like labia, voiced, high, strident, etc. The sound system of every language includes several natural classes, each distinguished from other classes by certain features. A given natural class is described using the minimum number of features needed to include all sounds within the class and exclude all sounds outside the class. How can we know sounds that fall into a natural class? Sounds that fall into natural classes tends to behave in similar ways, participating in the same phonological rules. All the members of a natural class are affected in the same way by the same rules in the same environment or context. Similarly, all members of a natural class have the same effects on other sounds that occur in their environments. Some natural classes in a language are larger and include several other natural classes within them, while some may be small with fewer speech sounds. For instance, consonants and vowels constitute large natural classes, and within each class are other similar classes such as sonorants, stridents, nasals, laterals, etc. However, note that the fewer the number of distinctive features needed to distinguish sounds in a natural class, the more natural the class. It can then be said that the class nasal is more natural than the class consonantal. For the first, you need just one feature to distinguish them. N is alveolar, M is bilabia, while ing is velar. All other features are redundant. For consonants, you will need to list many features to distinguish the sounds. Chomsky and Alley, 1968, formulated the standard theoretical account of this natural class generalization within a rule-based framework. The natural class generalization is accounted for by constraining rules to refer only to natural classes of sounds. That is, the set of sounds that undergo the rule, which are specified to the left of the arrow, must be a natural class. Any set of sounds referred to in the environment of the rule must be natural classes. Therefore, aspiration rule affects only voiceless plosives. Vowel nasalization affects only vowels. A natural class. In the environment of nasals, in brackets, another natural class. Redundancy. Phonemes, which is used to describe as indivisible, have been argued by generative phonologists as a bundle of features such that we can say /p/ is voiceless minus voice, bilabia in bracket plus labia, and plosive, in bracket plus plosive. Of course, there are other features of these sounds as consonants, in bracket plus consonantal. Redundancy in phonology simply refers to what could be assumed to be there, which you may not need to mention. When dealing with sounds, a redundant feature is one that is easily predictable about that sound. When something is said to be redundant in ordinary English, it means that thing is not used because something similar or the same already exists. It is a term applied to the analysis of the range of features used in making linguistic contrasts. It is an important aspect of phonology, which is captured by the use of distinctive features. Remember, we discussed distinctive features in the previous lecture. A feature is said to be redundant if its presence is unnecessary in order to identify a linguistic unit. For example, the contrast between P and B phonemes of English, as in P, pin, bin, can be defined in terms of voicing and aspiration. However, only voicing is distinctive because it is the only feature that affects the meanings of the words in which the sounds are used. Therefore, voicing is distinctive, while aspiration is redundant in English. However, in a language like Thai, where the meaning of a word is affected by aspiration, aspiration is not redundant but distinctive. Let's look at another example. All English segments which are plus nasal are also plus voice. There is therefore no reason to describe an English nasal sound M and N, ing, as plus nasal plus voice. Inherent in the description, plus nasal is equality plus voice. Adding such information for nasal sound is to fail to capture this redundancy. Why? The main distinctive feature here is the nasality. The voicing is secondary and entirely predictable. All nasal consonants are voiced. One of the principles of our phonology is to capture all the segmental contrast in word languages. We can capture this segmental contrast and show where there is no contrast with the knowledge of redundancy in phonological description. Where there is redundancy, there will be no contrast, nor possibility of contrast. For instance, if nasals are always voiced, then there cannot exist a contrast with voiceless nasal. Therefore, while identifying the distinctive feature of a language, we need to present only those features markings which contribute to the contrast in that language. The only time we may need to capture redundancies in language is when there is need to show that speakers of a language know about the redundancy. Let's look at another example. There are three nasals in English. The nasal alveolar stop N, the bilabial nasal stop M, and the velar nasal ing. If we ask an English speaker to invent a new nasal, say a palatal nasal, he or she will also automatically make it plus voice. His intuition makes him know that an English nasal sound must be voiced, though they are often assumed to be there, but not significantly paid attention to like distinctive features. These redundancy rules, segment structure rules, contrast with another type, sequence structure rules. The latter capture a speaker's knowledge of redundancy in the phonotactics of his language. For instance, in English, a syllable may start with pattern CCCV. However, the first C must be in bracket S, a completely redundant situation since no other consonant would function in that position. There are heavy constraints also on the remaining two consonants, since the second one has to be a plosive and the third a liquid or a semi-vowel. Some phonologists have claimed that the onset of a syllable strings consonants together with increasing sonority until you get to the vowel's nucleus, the supreme sonorous segment, followed by a coda of consonants of decreasing sonority. We discussed this under English phonotactics in study section 2. You may read that portion again to have a clearer picture of phonotactics and redundancy. Summary of study section 9. We have discussed in the foregoing study section that a natural class is a group of language sounds that share some phonetic features. We must not forget that the sound system of every language includes several natural classes, each distinguished from other classes by certain features. Sounds that fall into natural classes tend to behave in similar ways, participating in the same phonological rules. They are affected in the same way by the same rules in the same environment or context, and they have the same effects on other sounds that occur in their environment. In addition, we discussed that a redundant feature is one that is easily predictable about a sound. We learned that a feature is said to be redundant if its presence is unnecessary in order to identify a linguistic unit, and that can capture segmental contrast and show where there is no contrast with the knowledge of redundancy in phonological description. End of study section 9. Thanks for listening.